Hi, this is Randy. I'm going to read from a website that is an academic website, and it's called the Center for Sex Offender Management. Now, when we hear the word sex offender, we usually think of pedophiles. However, there are many, many different kinds of sex offenders. There are sex offenders that are not pedophiles. Actually, there are sex offenders that offend on people their own age, adults, and offensive sexual behaviors includes coercion and forcing sex against the other person's will. And it also includes girlfriends, wives, acquaintances, and it also includes while the other person is intoxicated or in some way impaired. So I ask you to open your mind about what the term sex offender really means. It does not mean someone who's been to court and actually been caught and locked up or put on probation for sexually offensive behaviors. So, simple factor theories. You'll remember from our discussion of typologies that the way in which some of them are described actually shed some light on why certain offenders may engage in sexually abusive behaviors from the beginning. For example, the fixated molester typology basically suggested that deviant sexual preferences were the driving force behind the offenses they committed. And for the anger rapist subtype, it was suggested that a primary reason for their crimes was the misdirected expression of anger and hostility. And this goes back to what we've all heard as the explanation that rape is not about sex, it is about anger and rage. What these represent, to some extent, are ways in which researchers and practitioners have attempted to explain the development of sex-offending behaviors using single elements or a fairly narrow set of factors. Here are some key examples of single-factor explanations. So the first single-factor explanation is the explanation that men give all the time: biological. Some researchers have suggested that certain kinds of biological factors, such as hormones, contribute to why individuals engage in sex-offending behaviors. Perhaps most common within this category is the role of high testosterone levels, which have been found to be associated with increased sex drive and aggression. And some biological theories suggest that certain individuals may be predisposed to problematic sexual behaviors because of physiological and biological predetermined sexual appetites or sexual preferences. Now, this is the explanation that almost all men and women who have a high sex drive and have difficulty controlling their drives and will tend to use manipulation and coercion on the other person. This is the excuse they give, that they have high testosterone and high drives, and that it's hormones, and that it's natural, and we should not go any further in trying to understand what's going on because it's just natural. It's just animalistic instinct and biology. And these people also go as far as to, in a narcissistic way, say that this actually is a good thing, that this high sex drive is a positive positive thing, and that they just can't help it, and they glorify it. The second single factor theory is behavioral. So it's biological versus behavioral. That's the nature versus nurture. The behavioral says that other theories believe that sex offending behaviors develop in part because of conditioning or learning. In other words, just as it is believed that individuals learn appropriate or socially acceptable means of sexual behavior or sexual expression, behavioral theorists indicate that deviant sexual interests or behaviors can also be learned. For example, a father who commits domestic violence in the home is modeling hostile and aggressive attitudes and behaviors toward women. And youth who are exposed to that kind of environment may learn to act in similar ways as part of their developmental experiences. So the article goes on to break down the behavioral theory. So if you can stretch your mind to believe that it's actually behavioral that and nurture that leads to deviant sexual behavior, the behavioral structure is broken down. A different type of behavioral theory involves conditioning, whereby over time an individual's sexual interests or arousal patterns become strengthened through certain types of experiences or reinforcers. When someone masturbates to fantasies that are deviant, for example, it tends to strengthen their interest or arousal to those unhealthy or inappropriate fantasies, which ultimately may lead to offending. So here is some evidence. Well, it's a theory, but it is a theory that I believe is correct, that would support the fact that masturbating to deviant porn, which almost all porn would be deviant because it doesn't include the love factor into it, so it's all animalistic, and it has varying levels of social deviance. And masturbating to these pornographic videos and pictures does condition the person to become more interested and aroused. It strengthens the unhealthy and inappropriate fantasies, and it can lead to offending. This is a fact that men will deny up and down, that watching porn could ever lead to offending. In fact, they use the excuse that actually it decreases offending, because without it they would actually be going around raping people. And the second way to look at the behavioral theory of deviant sexual behavior is originating from attachment and intimacy problems. And this is something that we hear about with narcissists, that has occurred in the narcissist's early life. And we see it, that they have problems with attachment and intimacy. One of the common characteristics and risk factors that we discussed earlier involved intimacy deficits. One theory of etiology of sex offending centers around those very issues. More specifically, it has been suggested that different types of problematic attachments may lead individuals to have a variety of problems related to intimacy in adult relationships, and that ultimately these intimacy deficits may lead individuals to engage in sexually abusive behavior. For example, theorists have suggested that insecurely attached persons may want to be emotionally close to others but avoid it out of fear of being rejected or hurt. In turn, some of these individuals may attempt to establish romantic or close relationships with children with whom they may feel more safe, and they may ultimately have inappropriate sexual contact with them. Those with dismissive attachment styles may have no desire whatsoever to become close or intimate with others, and may even harbor negative, angry, and hostile feelings toward others, such as adult women, and subsequently they may act out their anger or hostility in sexually aggressive ways. So this kind of reminds you of MGTOW, the guys that are seriously angry at women, and they generalize it to all women, giving all women the proverbial black eye, as Serena Nightshade says, based on what one or two or three women have done to them. And the fourth theory is sociocultural. Another way in which theorists have attempted to explain the etiology of sex offending emphasizes the role of societal and cultural structures, norms, and messages. For example, some theorists suggest that desensitizing messages of violence in television or video games may implicitly condone violence. Others argue that the ways in which women and children are sexualized or portrayed as submissive and passive through advertisements, television programs, and films may contribute to sexual violence. Yet, others believe that men are socialized to be aggressive and to dominate or conquer women and children, which some theorize encourages male violence. So, these are the theories, and my tendency is to feel that yes, people do have higher testosterone and higher sex drives than others. However, that is not the whole picture, and high sex drives can definitely be controlled based on the person's integrity and other overall functioning, insight, and actual intention or will to control it. I believe that the deviant sexual behaviors that we see are actually more behavioral based, more conditioned, more learned through sociocultural means, and that they are very prevalent in those who have developed attachment and intimacy disorders or problems earlier in life, whereas they become angry and they take out their anger and hostile feelings against the opposite sex, and in this case, women. So I hope this article helped or gave you something to think about when we discuss and comment about the narcissist's deviant sexual behaviors. We can think about these things, and we can also think about these things as occurring in the general population. It is not just for the narcissists, but it is actually applying to all people, narcissist or not. So when we theorize that its causes are behavioral, from society, from the media, and then also internal and psychological, based on the attachment and intimacy problems developed, we can understand where sexual offending and deviant behaviors originate, and hopefully the people that have these kind of deviant behaviors could look at this and actually try to resolve it and stop hurting people. Thanks for listening.